Here on NDTV, we are continuing with our budget analysis and all the reactions that are coming on it. Now, one of the budget provisions, corporate tax cut for foreign firms, has been lauded by international advisory councils. Now, the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, or USISPF as it's known, has welcomed the budget, calling it a forward-looking one that will propel India's growth. And to discuss this further with me, I'm joined by the President and CEO of the forum, Mukesh Aghi. Thank you, sir, so much for speaking to us here on NDTV.
Pleasure.
Right. My first question, sir, to you is, what is your initial assessment of the budget? If you could tell us, according to you, what was the most compelling provision?
Well, it's a budget which is focused on job creation, skill enhancement, and increasing FDI coming into the country. If we want the economy to grow at 8.5%, India needs roughly $110 billion annual FDI. Basically, by cutting the taxes by 5% on foreign companies, that encourages that. It makes them competitive with the Chinese companies on the manufacturing perspective. But more important is also bringing the angel tax out is going to encourage VCs to come and invest more in the Indian startups. So it's a budget which is focused on job creation and basically trying to bring from a macro perspective, bringing the deficit down from 5.1% to 4.8. That's going to release a lot of cash to private investors from borrowing perspective. So it's a healthy budget and a balanced budget.
Right. Specifically on this corporate tax rate cut, in your statement as well, the forum has lauded this move. But do you see this realistically drawing in more foreign investment?
Absolutely. I think when you look at multinationals are looking at every percentage point that brings them profit. So when you have 5% coming down, that's substantial. It does have an impact on industry exchequer in thousands of crores, but it also brings these companies to be much more competitive. And you have to understand, as US companies are looking at de-risking supply chain from China, every point, either PLI scheme or a tax reduction has an impact on their profitability and will also make them much more competitive. So I think, yes, it will have an impact. It is going to draw a lot of companies exploring India, not only as a de-risk to China, but also as a market to explore as India's economy grows from $4 to $5 trillion.
Right. As immediate steps, sir, since you are, in fact, and that also is a point which stood out in the statement, that this is being seen as an opportunity for India to actually improve its chances of replacing China as the key manufacturing hub in the global south, if I may call it that. Now, how do you think, what are some of the key steps do you see should be taken as a follow-up in order to achieve that goal?
Well, you have to understand, India has roughly around 1,600 GCCs, and they are now reached exporting point of $120 billion exports. But you have to understand, these GCCs are moving from cost saving to innovation. Substantial amount of IP is being produced. We are talking to companies on a daily basis because we do have a shortage of intellectual talent in the United States. We have a shortage of engineers in the United States, and GCC becomes an alternative for them to leverage that. You look at companies from Qualcomm to IBM, they are leveraging the Indian talent, which is cost effective, hardworking, and is able to produce IP, which is leveraged on a global basis. So I think what we are seeing is states are now fighting to get GCCs in their districts and states itself because they produce job creation on an overnight basis. Suddenly you'll have a GC coming in, setting up a center, hiring 5,000 people, 7,000 people. So I think GCC is a job creator, and it is an alternative to a lot of manufacturing efforts we're putting in. And so it is an attractive environment for US companies to leverage that.
Right. In fact, sir, taking off on that point, FICCI, which is one of the main industry bodies in our country, had also recommended that there should be an increase in funds allocated for research and development as well as for innovation. Is that also something you feel is critical to beat China? And in that respect, was that bit of a miss in the budget this time?
I think it's important to understand that if you look at the overall compared to GDP and R&D, India has one of the lowest ratio of R&D investments. I think it's important both from a public sector perspective and also from a private company perspective. We need to find ways to increase our R&D spending. If India is going to be a global power, if India is going to be a pharma for the world itself, then more investment credit has to be given in R&D. Yes, budget does play a critical role, but you have to understand it's the private sector which has to take the lead. And I think if we can find ways to give them credit on the investment R&D, that's going to spur a lot of innovation in the country.
Right. So following this move, sir, I mean, if you've managed to speak to, any respective industry body or person from the US, how are they, what kind of an excitement do you see this corporate tax rate cut being generated in US?
Well, I think what we are seeing is when you look at the multinational banks, they were paying roughly 18% higher taxes. By bringing that by 5%, it does incentivize them to expand further. And it's not just only the financial sectors. We look at the manufacturing sector. You look at the GCC. You look at the services sector. The 5% makes a big difference as you compete on a global basis. You look at when we made an effort to bring Apple to come in, the PLI scheme was around 5%. And today, Apple is producing 16% of its iPhones in India. So I think it is important. Every percentage point does make a difference. And 5% is a big number for multinational companies.
Right. Shifting focus a little bit from that aspect, sir, how does US view the jobs challenge that we can see, that India is in fact facing? In fact, this internship program, which has been proposed in the budget, is one of the measures which is being taken up in order to tackle that challenge. In terms of any past precedents, do you think that is a workable solution to, tackle the unemployment issue in a way?
Well, I think it's a brilliant move by the government. You have to understand, you have 65% of the population below the age of 35. When you look at the graduates coming out, only 51% are basically productive or scalable itself to come into the job market. So you have to invest more in making them scalable and productive as they come in the job market. But more important is by providing internship, you are basically introducing them to corporates, you introduce them to public sector, and if they are productive enough, they will continue with their jobs. And this will have impact on almost 20 plus million youth itself. And then on the skilling side, building up more ITI where you can train people. And this is not just only job creation for the Indian market. The question is, how do we leverage this on a global market itself? How do we leverage this for the GCCs? So I think it is important to understand that this budget focuses a lot on job creation by skilling them, by basically providing internship. That's going to create a momentum in the market itself.
All right. So one last question before we let you go. In the statement which has come out from from the forum, you've called the abolition of angel tax a landmark reform. In fact, that was one of the top demands being put up by the startup sector for sure. But do you think it's a little bit too late?
No, I don't think so. You have to understand startups create jobs. And this is not just in India. You look at United States, France, other places. And to be able to bring in angel investments in this startup is critical because that's high risk and you're able to basically encourage more investment. By not taxing it, it sends a strong message to investors. Hey, you can come in, put in the money and see if it works or not. And you have to understand, 9 out of 10 startups end up failing. But so it's important that you don't tax the angel tax. I don't think it's too late. I think it's a good move. It's a bold move. And let's see the results, what's going to happen in the next couple of years.
Right, Mr. Mukesh Aghi, appreciate your time to speak to us here on NDTV. And in a way, of course, we have seen a lot of reactions coming in on this specific measure, special tax rate cut for corporates having foreign roots. Thank you so much for speaking to us here.
Thank you.
On that note, we'll be heading into a short break. News and updates will continue right here on NDTV.